I think it all dates back to when I was a child growing up in Australia. And I remember that was the mid-80s when it was the golden age of the arcades. And I remember just always walking around with my pockets full of these 20-cent coins, because you never know when you're going to bump into an arcade there, right? Yeah, I think that helped define a lot of my creative sensibilities, just a lot of the arcade games of that era, like the really highly challenging, really rewarding type of experiences. And at the time there was a lot of abstraction as well. It felt like there was a lot of imagination. You could form really personal kind of connections with all of those things that were happening. Yeah, I think that was probably where everything started. And that continued when I moved to Greece afterwards, where I spent my formative years. Again, just playing a lot of arcades, growing up with a lot of consoles. And of course, consuming quite a lot of science fiction and, horror movies and action movies, of course, and everything in between. I think that it all kind of culminated recently into this point with Returnal expressing a lot of those sensibilities together. Yeah, regarding influences for Returnal, I think that there was a melting pot of a lot of different themes and ideas there. I mean, there were, of course, a lot of different movies with horror, dark sci-fi, time loops, of course, a lot of video game influences, and clearly the arcade spirit that we have established over many years now at Housemarque, that kind of neon-infused explosive arcade action. And with Returnal, we just wanted to crank that up to 13, really. It's interesting because I think a lot of the work that we do as creative people, whether we like it or not, it ends up being quite personal. I think we end up expressing something through that. And there were a lot of challenges that I was facing in my personal life at the time that I feel made their way into Returnal, into Celine, the main character. Yeah, just that idea of not having enough time in the world, feeling that you're being pulled into two different directions at the same time, trying to pursue greatness in your career, but also trying to be a loving and present father and spouse for your family. And yeah, I was thinking, like, what would be the ultimate cosmic joke for somebody who wants a lot more time? Well, throw them in a time loop. Now they have all the time in the world, right? We kind of nailed a lot of the fundamentals fairly early on. So the controls, the kind of interconnected levels, the roguelike elements, the camera. I think that, even a year in development, we kind of had the core of it, like, working fairly well. And that was polished, of course, to perfection over 4 years, but it didn't change fundamentally. I think the biggest changes that were noticed were regarding scope. Returnal was an exercise in dreaming. And I remember just thinking, yeah, we're going to have 15 different areas, and they're all going to have their own unique enemies and their unique narrative beats and mini-bosses and bosses. And we ended up shipping 6 biomes instead of 15. But that was just following the process of distillation as well. And honestly, I feel like it did result in a better game, because, more isn't always better. Sometimes it's just more. Brainstorming tends to be additive, but good design is always subtractive, it seems. Back when we had originally settled on the premise of the game, so that you're crash landed on a hostile alien planet, you're stuck in a time loop, death is no escape, the planet knows you better than you know yourself, and that you must break the cycle. We had this elevator pitch, as I called it. And from that pitch, that premise, we ended up making a Ripomatic. So Ripomatic is kind of like a mock-up trailer that you produce internally to try to communicate the vision of the game. And as we were collaborating with Sony Creative Arts back then to make that trailer, we're looking for somebody to voice it, because we had a VO, over and over, I keep dying and so on. And Jane actually appeared as an option there to just help with the recording of that. And we're like, damn, this is this sounds like Celine, this sounds like our main character, And from that moment, we just felt like, yes, this is the person we definitely want to work with. She had the charisma, the grit, the eloquence, the character. It was exactly what we were looking for. And the rest is history, as they say. Yeah, it went something like this, that you crash land on a hostile alien planet with no hope of escape. You don't remember how or why you got there, but you quickly succumb to the cosmic forces on the planet. But upon your death, instead of finding peace, you reawaken just moments before the inevitable crash landing again. So you're trapped in this endless cycle where death is no escape. Each time you awaken, you see that the planet is somehow different. It's like some cosmic forces are toying with your sanity. And as you slowly make progress, you start discovering remnants of the planet's history, of this alien civilization that met an untimely demise. And perhaps most eerie of all, you start encountering things that seem deeply personal in nature. So it seems almost like this planet knows you better than you know yourself. And despite all this, your only hope is to keep moving forward and to keep looking for answers. And your only hope is to break the cycle before the cycle breaks you. It's a elevator pitch. It's a pretty long elevator ride. It's a fantastic feeling of fulfillment to know that all of our hard work really paid off. I mean, making games is pretty hard, and over 4.5 years, you learn to embrace uncertainty, and you always have doubt. It's like, is this going to work out? How's it going to land? How's it going to be received? And I think especially with Returnal, we were treading so much uncharted territory. I think it was a new thing, not only for us, but generally for like the third-person action genre in a way. So, of course, we didn't really know what to expect. We felt that we had a fairly strong concept and a strong game, but it was incredible to see just the positive reception, the award nominations, and the awards themselves come in later. The crowning jewel of which, of course, were the BAFTAs that we won. So we're nominated for 9 BAFTAs and ended up winning 4, including that of Best Game. And that is by far the best possible kind of reward we could get for all of our hard work, I feel.